Hello, welcome to another video and a highly requested one at that. I'm happy to be giving the people what the people have been asking me for, and that is my Polar Fantasy recommendations. I feel like Polar Fantasy as a subgenre is one that I've pretty quickly become associated with. When I asked on Twitter about what people associate with me, Polar Fantasy was pretty heavily what I got back. And I'm not mad about that because it is a subgenre that I discovered about this time last year and fell absolutely head over heels in love with. So I'm gonna give you my recommendations. I'm gonna let you know a little bit about what Polar Fantasy is and why I love it so much, and hopefully you can take something away from this and potentially give Polar Fantasy a go yourself if you haven't already. Maybe even give me some recommendations if you have any Polar Fantasy that you think I would enjoy. So let's just crack on with it, shall we? Polar Fantasy as a subgenre is pretty self-explanatory, I think. Polar Fantasy, so as a whole genre, it would fall under fantasy, magic, you know, mythical creatures, magic systems, a fantasy element to it. Polar being, you know, North Pole, South Pole, cold, frosty, icy, mountain expeditions in the snow, slidey, you know, what are they called? Avalanches. Risky situations, expeditions, being stranded in the snow, just generally cold atmospheres, wintry forests, so quite a lot of the like Russian set stories would fall into Polar Fantasy because they're kind of snowier. Your Norse stories tend to be on the polar side of things, and then obviously you've got your mythical wintry lands, of course, as well. Anything set in, you know, the Arctic falls into Polar Fantasy, so pretty much that's all it is. It's just a fantasy story set in a wintry setting. Wintry is probably the best way to explain that. I don't know why I didn't just go with that from the beginning. But yeah, basically fantasy set heavily in winter, smush them together, you've got Polar Fantasy. There you go, that's all it is. I love it. I love wintry settings. I'm so into it and have been for about a year now, but with, you know, summer had to happen, so I didn't read much of it then. But now getting back into winter is when all the Polar Fantasies kind of come out to play, I suppose, and we've got some crackers on the horizon that I'm really excited about, so let's just get on with it, shall we? One of my favourite Polar Fantasy books, 5 stars, one of the first 5 stars I gave of the year, a Polar Fantasy that I would recommend to pretty much anyone. It is an adult. It is the only adult novel on this list of books that I've read that I recommend, and that is The Bear and the Nightingale by Catherine Arden. This just about falls into Polar Fantasy. It is set in a cold, wintry setting. You've got the wintry forest. It's Russian-based, so as I said, those Russian-based stories tend to fall into Polar Fantasy. This was a fantastic book. I loved it. I gave it 5 stars. I think I can understand why some people potentially wouldn't enjoy this as much as I did, because it's quite slow and the family explanations and the family dynamic for a decent portion of this is a bit confusing, but the magic and the mythology are amazing, and it's 2 of my favourite things combined. I really enjoy Russian mythology-based stories, like based on Russian folktales but retold, mixed with that bit of Polar Fantasy. So it's fantastic, in my opinion. I completely recommend. This follows Vasya, and her mother dies, and she's kind of branded a witch, and there are demons living in her house, and, well, not just her house, but, like, the world, but she can see them and she can interact with them, and people think that she's a bit of a witch, and maybe a bit of an outcast, and I don't want to say too much because I don't want to spoil anything, but love it. Really recommend it. If you're not into slow-paced things, maybe it definitely picks up towards the end, but the beginning is a bit slow, so I can get why some people might not potentially like that. But as an adult Polar Fantasy, 5-star read, and I didn't give many books 5 stars this year, and this was one of the few that I did. Just trust me, it's fantastic if you haven't read it. I made my mum read this recently as well, and she's also loved it and gave it 5 stars, so there you go. 2 recommendations in one! But yeah, adult polar fantasy that is fantastic, in my opinion. Let's move on to a young adult polar fantasy recommendation, and that is Even the Darkest Stars by Heather Fawcett. I gave this one 4 stars, maybe 4.5. Like, it was really good, and I'm eager for the sequel to this one. This follows Kamzin, who's always wanted to be a mountain explorer, and the circumstances kind of fall upon her where she's given the opportunity to do what she's always wanted to do. And things just get totally twisted up and all over the place from there. I will say with this book, what I got is not what I expected, and it was the best sort of surprise ever. It was so good. The blurb of this explains how she wants to be a mountain explorer, and that happens. And it doesn't really give you any sort of inclination that there's a whole heck of a lot of fantasy in here as well. Like, she has a pet dragon. I mean, it's not like a big dragon, like you would expect when someone says dragon, but like a little sidekick dragon, which is really cool, and there are witches and spirits and all sorts of messed up things going on this massive mountain that no one's ever managed to climb, and there's something at the top that the Emperor needs, so it's like a mission to save the country and deliver her dreams and get mixed up in all of this like fantasy business along the way, set on a snowy, high-stakes expedition. Loved it so much. And there was a certain element of like predictability to it, and there are a few like typical YA tropes in there, but the way that it was done and the setting and just the plot as a whole, I loved. I just loved this so much, and I really recommend it, and I don't think it gets enough recognition for how good it is, and I just really like it. And yeah, a solid polar fantasy recommendation from me on that one. Another YA polar fantasy that I've got for you is one that I read pretty recently actually, and that is A Shiver of Snow and Sky by Lisa Ludek. I had this on my shelf for the longest time and had absolutely no idea that it was a polar fantasy, and with this cover and this title, how did I not work that out? How did I not figure out that A Shiver of Snow and Sky with this snowy cover and these snowy trees was a polar fantasy? I don't know, but I picked this one up and was thoroughly surprised, blown away by it. It was so nearly a 5-star read for me. There was just a little bit of me that I was sitting there debating, like, is it 5 stars? Is it not? Is it not? And I eventually decided to go with 4, because I tend not to do like half stars and stuff, otherwise it would be like a 4.8 or something. This was phenomenal. I loved it. I loved the characters, I loved the setting, I loved the like isolated village style, I loved the role that the like goddess had, and how this village they had their fate told by the sky. So the blurb, the slogan almost, red, red, the lights glow red, beware the danger up ahead. So whenever something terrible is going to happen to this little isolated island and the little villages in it, the northern lights essentially glow red, and that is the goddess warning them that something terrible is going to happen. And typically that terrible thing is a horrible plague that will just wipe out like most of the population of this island. This time something different happens, and it's our main character going on a mission to try and stop it, basically. You know, heroine on her own trying to save the world sort of thing, but like so isolated, and she's on her own for so much of it. It was really interesting because like she's, as I say, on her own for a lot of it. It was very interestingly done, and I loved it, and I loved the little isolated village vibe and just how, you know, dangerously cold it is. That's what I love about these polar fantasies. The settings are just so immersive and just absolutely suck me in. So this book sucked me in. But yeah, the role that the goddess had, and the role that the weather had, and the little mysterious bits, like it's so dark and blizzardy that you can't quite work out what's happening, and I just loved it. And the like mysterious mountain caves, great fantastic, love it, really recommend this one. I mean, I don't know why I keep saying that, this is my recommendations, of course I recommend this book, but yeah, blew me away, completely surprised me, loved it. There you go. Now I'm going to move on to middle grade, which I've noticed personally contains a lot more polar fantasy than adult and YA do, at least that I've come across, especially at this time of year. I think like with the Christmas period, they just kind of pump out Christmassy books, not necessarily Christmassy books actually, but like wintery books. So I've got a few to recommend if you like middle grade, which I happen to really like, especially polar fantasy middle grade. So my number one middle grade polar fantasy recommendation, one of the books that really, you know, pushed me into polar fantasy and falling in love with it so much, is The Polar Bear Explorers Club by Alex Bell. This was such a magical, fuzzy, heartwarming adventure story of a young girl who, she was adopted by this explorer, and he goes out on this expedition and she desperately wants to go with him and ends up persuading him that she can go. She's only like 10 or something, and she gets separated from the main expedition, her and a couple of other kids, and they have to kind of like navigate the northern area on their own and put up with these dangers, and they find some mysteries, and it's just fun. It's such a fun middle grade story, and I loved the characters and the setting and just all of it. Also, this cover is absolutely beautiful. But the obviously main point that happens in this I can't tell you because that would spoil it. But trust me, it's just so heartwarming and adorable. And the sequel to this has come out recently and I'm hoping to read that this winter, and I love it so much. I'm so attached to the story. It holds such a special place in my heart now because it exposed me to a whole subgenre that I fell so heavily in love with, and I just really recommend this if you like middle grade. I mean, even if you don't particularly like middle grade, I would still recommend it just because it's such a good book and I really liked it. But I won't gush too much, I will move on. The next one I have for you is Skysong by Abby Elphinstone. This is a really cute story, and this is sort of a retelling of like the Snow Queen, because we do have the, do they call her the Snow Queen or the Ice Queen, or Ice Queen, who is your like evil force in this book, and our main character, who has been captured and living in a cursed music box for however long, manages to break free, and that's where the story goes. So you've immediately got magic and this curse and the Ice Queen and this girl, and your main character doesn't know where she belongs, doesn't know where she's come from, like her memory's not quite right because she's been in this cursed box, and she's trying to find a place to belong, trying to find someone to help her and get rid of the Ice Queen, break the curse, save the world, etc. But it's just so cute and so fun, and the magic is cool, the atmosphere is just so lovely, and again, just the setting, just so beautiful. Polar fantasies tend to be set in such beautiful settings, and that is what draws me to them so much. I just love it. Love it. Love it. I feel like I'm just repeating myself because the main selling point for these books on me is the setting, the Arctic adventure, the snow, the cold, the chill, the beauty of it. Like, there's something so appealing to me about this just blank canvas of white and like the danger in the background and like the looming of it almost, and then you've got like the northern lights and there's like some mythical creatures and stuff in here as well which play a role, and you've got the normal wintry creatures. I really liked this, and she ends up finding some people and they have a little gang to try and take down the Ice Queen, etc. But I won't tell you how they manage that because that would be spoilers. Then I have another relatively recent read, which is Frostfire by Jamie Smith. Again, follows our main character, a little girl who is gonna save the world. What was different about this one and quite unique about this one is that the location was a character. So it's set on this mountain that's like this blessed mountain, and these people bond with it. So like if you are worthy, you can scrape a sliver from the mountain and like bond with it, and then you have a part of the mountain's consciousness with you, and it gives you these icy powers, which is really unique. I loved the way that worked with this, and I loved the twists and turns that this had. There were some unpredictable moments. I really liked it. Again, our main character is on her own for a fair portion of this, which was refreshing. Like, she is a strong heroine, but she's also got the consciousness of the mountain there with her, and it was just really unique, and I liked it a lot, and like high stakes, etc. Very dangerous stuff going on, but very, very enjoyable, and I enjoyed the characters and the setting, and the fact that the setting was a character, which was different but great. And then my last middle grade recommendation is The Eye of the North by Sinead O'Hart. This one's a chunkier one, and this one is potentially the funniest one. I really enjoyed this. The sense of humour in here was fantastic, but also the setting, of course, is the selling point. This follows a girl called Emmeline who is like abducted and needs to find her parents. But her parents have been taken to like this lab in the north, and there is some messed up stuff going on, and there is an evil guy that wants to do some evil things, and she has to explore, find allies, try and bring her parents back and save the world while she's at it, with the companionship of a guy named Thing, which was different, but again, mythical creatures, magical, weird stuff going on, and lots of high-stakes adventures whilst this little girl is on an adventure and being chased by villains. So they're my immediate recommendations of books that I've read, but there are more that I'm looking forward to, which I feel like I should just mention just while I'm here. One of those is the sequel to the Polar Bear Explorers Club, which is Explorers on Witch Mountain, which I have just here. This is the second book in the series. I'm assuming we are following the same characters. Yes. More expeditions in the Polar Bear Explorers Club, and I'm assuming they go to Witch Mountain this time because this is Explorers on Witch Mountain. I love the Polar Bear Explorers Club so much. I'm so looking forward to continuing this story, being back there with those characters in that world, and just the fuzzy feelings that this gave me, or that the first one gave me, I know this is going to give me as well, so I'm really looking forward to that. Then we also have The Girl in the Tower and The Winter of the Witch by Catherine Arden, which are the two sequels to The Bear and the Nightingale. I've had The Girl in the Tower for the longest time. Typically I don't have it right now because my mum's got it. I've had it for the longest time, and I haven't wanted to read it because I knew I would have to wait for The Winter of the Witch. But The Winter of the Witch comes out January time, so it's really soon, so I'm hoping to pick that one up pretty soon as well. And again, 'tis the season for polar fantasies, so I'm probably gonna read it sometime within the next couple of months, and probably read The Witch of Winter as well when that comes out too. And another one that I'm really looking forward to is the sequel to Even the Darkest Stars, which I can't remember the name of typically, but I will put it here for you. I can't remember what it's called, but this is it, and it's the sequel to Even the Darkest Stars. I can't explain what's going to happen in that one, but I'm so eager for it. The story is going places, and I want to go there with it. I'm looking forward to it. There are some things that I need some answers to that I know that book will give me. Probably give me more questions as well, but I'm eager for that completely. And off the top of my head, I think that's everything I wanted to say in this video. If you know of any books that you think would fall nicely into this category that I haven't mentioned and that I might not know about and that I should get to, then please let me know. Leave more polar fantasy recommendations down below because I'm all about that, and I am always eager to read more of them, so I would really appreciate that. As you could see, there was only one adult polar fantasy that I've read. If you know of any more, let me know. Someone did send me a few on Instagram, but the message is gone now and I've lost them all, so I don't know what they were, because I wasn't clever enough to like take a screenshot or something like a normal person probably would have. I didn't do that, so I've lost them. But if you have any adult polar fantasy recommendations, or YA, or middle grade, or whatever that you think I would be into, then please send them to me. Eager for that. And, you know, if anyone else is here looking for more polar fantasy recommendations, then the comment section would be the place to go to for a few more. I hope this video has been somewhat informative. I know a few people had asked me to do this. I hope this has lived up to your expectations of what you were expecting from me. If you have any other questions about polar fantasy, or anything, or you just want to chat to me about it in general, then please do. I'm totally down for that. But that's all I had to say today. I've actually got a bit of a sore throat because I've been speaking for far too long now. So yeah, I'm gonna go, but thank you for being here. I hope you have enjoyed. If you have, please give us a thumbs up. As I say, chat to me down below, and I will see you next time. Bye!